Look at any measure of modern global influence, and Japan is at the center of it. It's a hyper-connected powerhouse, driving technological innovation, high-end manufacturing, and a cultural export engine that reaches every corner of the planet. Yet for centuries, the exact opposite was true. The nation intentionally cut itself off from the rest of the globe, pulling up the drawbridge and refusing almost all outside contact. This creates a fascinating contradiction. Japanese culture feels fiercely distinct and incredibly protective of its traditions, but its very foundation relies on a massive influx of adapted foreign ideas. Throughout its history, the country has followed a distinct rhythm: long periods of intense seclusion, followed by sudden bursts of radical integration. To understand how Japan became the economic and cultural titan it is today, we have to track this historical pendulum as it swings between strict isolation and radical adaptation. For thousands of years during the Jomon period, early Japan was relatively quiet. It was home to localized groups of hunter-gatherers, best known today for their distinctive cord-marked pottery. That localized existence shifted aggressively starting around 300 BCE. Throughout the Yayoi and Asuka periods, Japan began looking across the sea, actively absorbing massive amounts of influence from the Asian mainland. Migrants and merchants brought over transformative technologies. Wet rice farming replaced foraging with permanent agricultural settlements. Metal tools allowed for larger-scale construction and warfare, and Buddhism provided a new spiritual framework for a growing administrative class. These imported concepts provided the blueprint for a powerful centralized state. By the Heian period, Japan built a deeply refined aristocratic court system, creating a booming culture of art, poetry, and political maneuvering in Kyoto. This initial era proved that Japan could take foreign systems and successfully mold them to build a highly structured, distinctly Japanese identity. But centralized power rarely lasts forever. The imperial state eventually fractured, plunging the country into the Sengoku period, over a century of brutal, constant warfare between regional lords fighting for territory. The chaos only ended when a series of military leaders brutally unified the nation. By the early 1600s, Tokugawa Ieyasu established absolute control, shifting ultimate authority away from the emperor and firmly into the hands of the samurai class. Having secured the country, the new Tokugawa shogunate locked it down. They enacted the Sakoku policy, intentionally slamming their borders shut to nearly all foreign trade, travel, and outside influence. This pyramid shows how they maintained absolute internal peace. Society was forced into 4 strict tiers: the ruling samurai at the top, followed by peasant farmers, artisans, and finally merchants at the bottom. While it sounds repressive, this 250-year Edo period was a highly productive incubator. The long era of peace allowed cities to explode in size and uniquely Japanese culture to solidify, entirely free from the pressure of foreign dilution. That isolation shattered in 1868. Faced with heavily armed, industrialized Western powers demanding trade, Japan realized its secluded feudal system could not survive. The resulting Meiji Restoration stripped the samurai of their power and returned it to the emperor. In a matter of decades, the country systematically speedran Western industrialization, adopting foreign institutions, factories, and even military dress to ensure they wouldn't be colonized. Rapid industrialization created a massive demand for raw materials the island lacked, while the new leadership adopted the Western view that territorial expansion was proof of a modern power. This drove the nation into a series of aggressive conflicts, asserting its reach through wars with China and Russia. This rising tide of nationalism and militarism consumed the government into the Showa period. It drove Japan into World War II, a campaign of rapid conquest that eventually collapsed into total devastation, ending with atomic bombings and absolute urban ruin. Forced openness had successfully modernized the nation, granting it massive industrial leverage, but the resulting imperial ambition ultimately led to the most catastrophic crisis in its history. Following the formal surrender, the state had to be rebuilt. Under the U.S. occupation, Japan drafted a 1947 constitution, permanently closing its imperial era. Through Article 9 of this constitution, the country legally renounced war, committing to pacifism and democratic governance. the military was dismantled, leaving the nation's immense industrial capacity in need of a new direction. This chart tracking Japan's GDP shows exactly where that energy went. They redirected every ounce of their national ambition away from military conquest and poured it directly into commercial manufacturing. By dominating consumer electronics and global exports, Japan's economy exploded, making it the second largest in the world. But if we follow that same line, we see the growth suddenly stop. The asset bubble burst as the Heisei period began in 1989, triggering a long-term plateau and forcing the country to navigate decades of economic stagnation. Today, in the Reiwa period, the nation faces a new set of complex hurdles, managing a rapidly aging population while trying to maintain its position in a highly competitive global market. Japan's history is a record of enduring through catastrophic disaster and radical shifts, repeatedly absorbing foreign innovation and refining it into something distinctly its own.